So the first thing we need to do in Max here is create a additive synthesizer, okay? And I'm just gonna blast through this kind of fast to get us to the new stuff. So let's make a metro, and I'll make it 250. I'll add a toggle to it so we can turn it on and off. I'm gonna add a bang on there just so I can see it. It's going to send to a counter, which is gonna count to 5. We'll do 5, why not? Okay, and then the counter is going to run into a selector object that counts to 5. Connect that on there. Just this is exactly what we did the other day, right? And then on my counter here, I'm going to trigger notes 60, because remember, right? We're triggering MIDI notes. Let's do 63, 67, 68, and 48. Okay? And then all of these are going to go into the K slider, which is the keyboard. And now this is going to post. If I turn this on, lock it down, turn it on, it's now playing my chord progression, right? Is this big enough for you guys to see it? Okay, it's all right? Okay. Okay, so now we need to, what do we have to do next? What's next? We need to convert this MIDI number that's coming out of here into a frequency, right? Because these MIDI numbers are not frequencies. So we use the MTOF object, and that's going to convert my MIDI number into a frequency. So I'll put a float underneath here. And now the number 48 is posting as a frequency of 130 instead. Okay? So we have a synthesizer now that's creating a frequency. It's creating a little chord in order. So let's now make a synthesizer for it. So I'm going to use the cycle tilde. And this will be my fundamental. All right, we're going to attach that on there. And then I'm just going to make a bunch more oscillators. Let's make 5. And I don't know, I'll make this one a saw tilde. Make this one a rectangle tilde. Maybe another saw. I like saws sound good, man. They're just delicious. So, and then, the cool thing too is that we can use the harmonic series. We could also use multiples of pi or whatever you want for your frequencies, right? We'll use the harmonic series. So I'm going to multiply by 2 for each of these frequency bands. Multiply by 3. Right? Multiply by 4. Remember, I'm just option dragging is the easiest way to make a new one of something. Multiply by 5. Okay? And then I'm passing these frequencies to all of these. I mean, this is what you guys all did already. So none of this should be new stuff. Okay. So we're good. We got our fundamental over here, which is the fundamental pitch of the array, and then it's being sent out to these other sounds. So let's go ahead now and connect this. The first thing I'm going to do is make some gain sliders. I want each of these to have their own gain. The first one I won't because it's the fundamental, so I'm going to give it its full volume. But let's go ahead and add volume to these other things. All right, and now we're going to connect this to another gain. This will be my main gain slider, or just to, unify them all. Well, I'll just do 2 stereos. Okay, and this is going to be my main volume controller. So I'm going to pull up the inspector over here and change my color to that nice red so that I can see it clearly, right? This is the main volume control. Yeah?
How do we do not the integer value, but the fraction value again? Right under that.
This? Yeah. Hit F for float, but yep, it's the float box. Ryan, I didn't bring my computer. I totally forgot about it. So you're just doing these at home? Okay. Okay, I'm making a video, so you can do it at home. So, okay. So now I just need to connect all of these to these objects, right? And I could, there is a lot of ways of consolidating all this stuff together. Like I could just do a plus audio box. Let me make this bigger, right? So if I do a plus audio box, I mean, this is kind of nice because then I can just gather all of these, right? Like this. Into the plus audio, then it goes into here. And then it's an additive synthesizer, right? That in there, and then the mute button, right? So the next thing we need is mute, so I'll go over and pull the mute button up. Where is it? Mute, here it is. Unlock, copy, paste. Okay, so then my output for right goes, or left goes into the left. My output for right goes into the right. And I should now have a synthesizer, right? We're back basically where we were the other day. So let's turn this on. Yep, there it is. Okay, cool. So that works. So let's now, this is basically where we were, right? Let me go back to the assignment now and take a look at it. Any questions so far? Okay, so this is where the new stuff comes in, right? And we'll add reverb and delay in there too. In fact, what am I doing? I'm looking at the actual assignment. I'm so bad in this program, like fumble around all the time. Okay, so use the line object to ramp a value changes somewhere in your patch. Okay, so let me show you a really cool thing that we can do with line. So as you can imagine, what if I want to make this sound? Let's add a couple more oscillators on here. Let's add 6 and 7, okay? Just for funsies, so we have more. 6 and 7. So imagine that I want to use this same metro to generate a frequency change of all of these sounds here, okay? So let me show you something cool that we can do. If I use random, remember the values between these volume controllers is 0 and 158, 57. So I'm going to do random 130, okay? Because I never want these to get too loud. So let's do random 130. In fact, I never want them to be at 0 either. So I'm actually going to let's do random 100 and then do a plus 30 on the bottom, right? Because that's going to automatically make the number, if I pull a 0, it'll be a 30, right? Because it'll add 30 to it. So, as you can imagine, this is going to generate a random number between 0 and 30, between 0 and 100, and then add 30 to it every time, right? So what if I attach this to a volume controller? Now you can see what the volume controller is doing, right? The volume controller is ramping or like changing based on that random number that pops out. Okay? So we can also do this, though. Pack, this is just a little thing I know, integer 200. And then we're going to connect this to a line object. So what do you think is going to happen here? Any ideas? What do you think line does? Line is going to ramp the data now. So if the number goes from 0 to 50, it's going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 50. It's going to ramp up instead of going 0 to 50. It's now going to be a linear motion to 50 over 200 milliseconds. Okay? So watch what happens now when I bang the random object. Look at the volume slider now. Cool, right? Now it's like making every time that sound. So we're just going to get a nice, a softer approach to the changes of the sound because it's going to ramp. Yeah.
So can you do like automation with this?
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is just attach this to the same metro, right? I'll grab this metronome. Let me show you another really cool thing here. In Max, you can avoid using cables by using return, send, and receives. So I'm going to make a new object called send metro time. Okay, I'm going to connect this to the metronome. And then over here, I'm going to receive the same exact name. And look what's happening. Right? So basically I've made a special name, right? That name could be elephants or glue or whatever. As long as it's receive glue, it's going to work. Yeah. Let me see. Oh yeah, escape. It'll stop. You've lost control. So you can see what I just did, right? So let's actually now make 6 of these because we don't want to change the fundamental. I want the fundamental to be consistent. And remember, option drag is your favorite, right? Because I can now click on all of this, highlight it, and then option drag, option drag, option drag. That's 5, and that's 6. Okay? All of these are going to receive the metronome. Right? Because we want separate randoms. If it was all one random, then all the volumes would move at the same thing. Yeah? Zach, you can turn it up if you want. It's fine. So now I know it's getting messy in here. If I connect these lines to all of these volume sliders, you can see what's going to happen. Okay? And maybe I want some of these to move slower than others. So maybe this first one is going to move at 400 milliseconds. So you can see the first knob now is moving slower than the others because I changed this pack value to 400. So just so you know what's happening with pack, the line object is asking for 2 bits of data, a value, and then how much time to ramp to that value. So the I is being replaced by the number popping in. It's like a variable, right? The I is a variable. So the I replaces the line, and the 400 and the I go into the line and they ramp it. Okay. So, anyways, so now let's hear what this sounds like. Funky, right? So there's a lot of things we could do here. You know, the ramping is a little intense. So, you know, because the problem right now is the value could go from 0 to 100 like that, or over 200 milliseconds, right? So what if we wanted a subtler effect? I see you, 1 second. If we wanted a subtler effect, we could use another randomizer called drunk. So drunk is really sweet. I love it. What it does is it asks for 2 values. Okay? The maximum range away and then the step. Okay? So we want a range between 0 and 100, but we're going to say never go further than 35 away, which is cool, right? So now the value will never go from 0 to 100 because 0 to 100 is 100 away. The furthest any number can be from the previous one is 35 numbers. So it's kind of like it's wandering, meandering, but it's not going to go ugh, and be way over there. So drunk is really cool at kind of taming down the randomization. Do you have a question? So what pack does, it just takes those 2 numbers and puts them together. The integer that's flowing into it, the 48, right, that number box above, and then the number 400. Because the line object says, I need 2 pieces of data. the numbers I'm ramping to, and then how long. So it's constantly getting those two numbers from pack. Okay, does that make sense?
Ramping two on the layer thing?
The what?
Ramping two on the layer thing?
Right, so what's happening, right, is that, I can show you what pack does with this little box here. It's taking these numbers and doing this over and over and over. It's sending that into the line. The number 200, and then whatever is coming out of that randomizer. Okay? And then what it's doing is, instead of these numbers jumping instantaneously, it's ramping to the value. Okay? So the same thing, if I take an integer box and put it on here, oops, you'll see it ramp. See what's happening? So does that make sense? It ramps to whatever the previous value was. So let me slow this down. It might help make sense. If we make this like 600. So watch this little box here. Right? Instead of it going instantly to that next number, it's it's counting up to that next number, counting down to the previous one. What? That's how much time it's taking to get from one number to the next in milliseconds. So you can see all these values, instead of jumping instantaneously to another value, they're moving in slow mo. They're sliding up. It's basically creating sliding instead of instant value time, Yeah. Let me take a peek. Oh, because you don't have a sender. Right, your metro time, you need a send. See mine at the top? Send metro time. See it connected to the metronome? So you have to create a send object first, and then a receive object to receive that data. Does that make sense? What? You can just connect them. Yep. You could run a cord over there if you wanted. So, you know what I'm talking about, Audrey? Like this, see this? Has to be there. You're missing it. Okay. Yeah, Ben? What? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I could have 40 receipts of the same data, right? Okay, so this is getting kind of messy, and I'm going to actually take all of this over here and lasso it and hit Shift-Command-E to encapsulate it. So this and I'm going to call these my randomizers. Right? And now it just kind of takes all of that stuff that was kind of all over the place, and then I can kind of move it over here and stretch it out a little bit, and now it's not such a mess, right? And again, remember we talked about this like the other day. I could now do this and double this whole thing and have a whole nother synthesizer, right? And a whole nother set of randomizers, basically. Okay, so anyways, that right now then is ramping the values, okay? So that is covering that part of the assignment. Now there's other things we could ramp. What if we wanted to make this have portamento instead of going from one note directly to the next? You know what a portamento is? What is that, portamento? Or glissando, you know what that term means?
Like glides from one note.
Yeah, when you go, you slide from note to note instead of going instantly from note to note. That's called a glissando or a portamento. So we could add that really easily, okay? I'm going to just use the same exact thing, but where would I put, what do I want to glide? What am I gliding if I add glide? Yeah, the frequency, right? So my frequency's right here. So let's add a glide to it, all right? So I'm going to use the same thing again, pack. I'm I'm going to use a float this time because the frequency is a float number, right? And then let's start with a 0, actually. And then I'm going to use line underneath, right? And then I have to connect the frequency line. I basically need to insert this in here, correct? So let me move all this up so we have room for that. So right now, there's no glissando. And why is that? Tell me why there's no glissando. Because the ramp value is 0 on the pack. Okay? This inlet is how much time there is that's replacing the 0. So let's do this. I'm going to use another object called slider. Okay? Now this is not a volume slider. It's just a value. It's just a number value. Okay? And in fact, again, its number value is between 0 and 128. So if I connect this here, listen to how this is going to change. Right? You hear what's happening? So whatever number is coming out of here, and I can just show it by doing this if I want, that's going to be now the value of my glissando. Okay. Notice too that I've dropped my decimals. And the reason is because I didn't define this line object with a 1. Now it's going to ramp. Doesn't really matter though. Okay? Okay? Let's add the reverb and delay right now because it's a good time and it'll sound way better. Yeah. Okay. I know I'm kind of moving fast, right? And that's so. Okay, because all of these are connected to the saws instead of the volume controllers.
Oh, okay.
See that?
Yeah. That's crazy.
It's fine. So you guys, I know I'm moving really fast. I'm making a video of this, right? You can pause it and do it in your own time. It's partly because we just don't have a lot of time in class. Okay? So any questions right now before I move on? So let me add the reverb and delay, okay? Max projects. All right, I have so many files. Various examples. I wonder if I can just drag this here. Nope, sure can't. All right, there's the delay. I should really just make these abstractions, right, where I can, here's the reverb. Okay? And I'm going to give both of these volume controllers just so we have some control over them. Shorten these. You know, a lot of this program is just getting used to clicking on stuff. It can drive you nuts, right? Like you misclicking, I'm moving at 1,000,000 miles a second, and you're like, it's like, you know, like you misclick and hit something wrong. Yeah. Yes, you can. It still would work. Your problem is going to be, like we then have to send special sends to it because it's audio cables. We can do that. But yeah, it does work, yeah. So let me connect these here. I mean, this is the same thing, the reverb and delay connected. And let's hear what this sounds like now. Change it to a saw too. Cool. That sounds pretty cool. So now we need to do the next part of this. Over here. Well, I talked about the switch and the gate. We'll do that next. Let me actually do this first, this function. Okay? So the function is going to allow us to add articulation to the notes. Right now, again, as we said, every note is turned on all the time, right? Which sounds lame. So let's make it so we can go bum, 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 right? It can actually play the notes short or long or whatever I want. So I'm going to use an object called function, okay? And when I make it, you can see it's a box. Well, the second outlet of this function is going to output all of these values from this line. So let me show you what I mean. What? I made new and then function. I typed in function. When you hit enter, it will turn into a big box. Okay? So when I lock this, I can now actually create an ADSR. Do you guys know what an ADSR is? What's that stand for, audio people? Yeah, Colby?
Attack, decay, sustain, release.
Right. So now, if I bang my function, okay, it's going to output all of the data points on this line really quickly. Between 0 and 1 vertically, and then over, I think, 500 milliseconds horizontally. Okay? So the thing is, what I need to do now, if you can imagine, if I multiply the entire signal by this value before it outputs at all, I can make it so that the sound is gated like this. All right, so let me show you what we're going to do. Let me move all of this down, just so we have more room again. Down, 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 up here, down here. So now what I'm going to do is make a new, sorry, I'm losing my, okay, here we go. I'm going to use new multiply, which again is the asterisk, right? Shift 8, the audio. And I'm going to put a 0 decimal after it. It's really important that you put that 0 decimal. So that's my thing, right? I'm going to drag this out so it's kind of long. And I'm going to attach it to the line object. I think I can leave that message box there. Okay? So now, as you can imagine, every time a note is played, how'd I get the what? This? Just get rid of it. Doesn't matter. So, remember this has to be line tilde, not line only. So, important thing. Every time I hit the bang here, it's going to replace this 0 with this profile that I just made in real time, right? Over 500 milliseconds. So I'm going to do this now. Grab this and just drag it over here. I'm going to grab all of these cables, and I do that by holding down Option and dragging. And I can drag all these cables and connect them to here. And then I'm going to connect that onto there. So if we zoom out now, you can see what I've done is I'm basically taking all the audio that's coming out of my synthesizer, and I'm first gating it through this multiplier that is going to add that profile to every single note. Okay? And then, as you can imagine, I now need to bang my function object with every time. So I'm going to actually use my metro time again and connect it here. And now listen to the synthesizer. All right, let's turn the delay off. I can also change the profile of this if I want, right? So do you guys understand what's happening? Does it make sense? The volume is now being basically profiled by this thing.
Can you do this on the function instead of going,
Make it curve?
make it curve so it sounds like backwards? Like, vroom.
Oh, yes. So in order to delete nodes on here, I just hold down Shift, and then I can delete the nodes if you make a big mess here. Yes. So I could do this, right? Basically, you're asking me for one of these. Yep. Okay? So anyways, so that's the majority of this stuff. Let's take a look at this gate and switch. So as we talked about, I talked about this, and did some of you already do this, have several chords? Elisa did. Anyone else have several chords by using this? So this is part of the assignment now, okay? So up here, I'm going to grab, this is my chord, right? Basically this thing right here. So I'm going to make a second one of these. And let's change the notes, right? 62. And again, like if you're wondering what your MIDI notes are, you can find charts online, super easy. 65, 72, 74, which is D, actually. And then I'll use 84, which is a high C. Okay? So right now the counter is counting down here. So first of all, this chord also needs to connect to the keyboard. So I'll run chords out here to the keyboard. Boom, boom, 4. And this is where the switch or the gate comes in. All right? Now, as you can imagine, a switch is the opposite of a gate. So if I do switch 6, you can see what it does. It allows me to send 6 different inputs into it and then output them out 1. Okay? The gate is the opposite. If I do gate 6, it allows me to collect data here, actually it comes out of here, and then send it to 6 different places. Okay? And basically, so what I'm doing is I only have 2 chords here, so I'm going to do a switch 2. The first inlet is deciding which of these switches is going to work. It's looking for a 1 or a 2. So if I connect a message box with a 1 and a 2, I can now choose the chord that it's going to play. Okay? So whether or not, basically the easiest way to do this is actually to use a gate, right? Because we have 2 chords, right? So I'm going to use a gate 2. Oh, gate is annoying. You know, they should just all this stuff should be unified, and it's really not. Unfortunately, oh wait, 1 and 2, it is 1 and 2 also. So the gate input is over here, inputting message, right? And then the number value. So I'll grab these and bring them over here, right, like that. And then what I'm going to do is the counter is going to go into the gate, and then I'm going to say play the first one or the second one based off of that. So let me pull this over there so you can see kind of how it's going to work. All right. Let me pull this all down. You know, in this program, you're constantly trying to make more room for yourself. So you can just kind of click and drag to make more space. So see what's happening here? So watch what happens now. So the gates come in, the counter goes into the gate, and then the output determines which chord is going to play, right? I could have 5 chords if I wanted to. Just keep duplicating this, make the gate bigger with more numbers, and I'm off and running, right? Why is this? There we go. Okay? So it's a pretty easy thing to do. What else is on here? I think that's it. So again, find other ways to create variation in your patch. You guys are creative people. What else could you do to make this interesting? Colby?
You could do like the envelope like you have, but have it control like the volume of a
Single oscillator? Yep.
or use a filter to have an envelope on a filter.
Sure. You could also make, what's cool about this too, these do get recorded in the patch, by the way. If you save it with this picture in there, it'll stay. You could have multiple functions and then have a switch to change functions, right? So I could like make 4 different functions like this, and then up here use a gate to choose a different articulation of every note, of the notes, right? Yeah.
Can you randomize the gate?
Sure.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so what I would do is I would just go up here, make a random 2, okay? Now the problem with the randomizer is that it's going to send a 0 or a 1, right? So I'm going to need to add a plus 2, or plus 1, sorry, right? To make that a 1 or a 2. Then I can just connect the same metro here and connect it to these 2 inlets, right? Now the chord is going to change every time there's a metro bang, which might be not what you want, right?
You would probably have to line it up so it would change every 5.
I know I picked a weird number, picking 5.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you.
But yeah. You know what's really a cool way of doing this? Watch this. Make another counter, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. Connect to here, and then make a select with 1 only. Now every time there's a 1, it will change chords, right? But it's not going to change towards 2, 3, 4, or 5. In fact, I could just, well, yeah, I do want to have the counter count to 4 or 5. But now, basically, it's only going to change chords every 5 beats because of that counter, right? And because the selector is only 1. Okay? How do you guys feel about this? Do you hate it? Anyone hate it? Be totally honest. You hate it? Ryan, do you hate it? You don't seem enthused about it. It's okay? Okay. How are you guys feeling about it? Jalen?
I feel like it takes a lot of experience for it. I mean, I feel like going every day, you get better as it goes.
Yeah, it's a fascinating program. So let me show you the Arduinos that I did. And I mean, I don't want to spend a ton of time on these so I put this together, and I'll show you on Thursday how I made this work. Basically, it's so easy how to do this. Like, there's tutorials online for everything. You know, this is like $25 worth of hardware over here. So anyway, so that's it for this assignment, right? I'm going to go ahead and stop recording this now.